All right, so today we're going to dive into two incredibly different blueprints for human intimacy. On one hand, you've got this detailed manual rooted in centuries of Islamic tradition that sees sex as a spiritual practice. And on the other, a super modern guide from the world of sexology, laser focused on the mechanics of female pleasure. So how do these two completely different worlds even begin to approach the same fundamental human experience? Well, let's find out.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the core tension we're talking about. On the left, intimacy is framed as an act of worship, where something physical gets elevated to the spiritual. But on the right, the focus is squarely on the clitoris as an orgasmic powerhouse. It's all about the physiological and psychological pursuit of pleasure. Two guides, two totally different worlds.
So let's get right down to it and start with the most basic question of all. What is the point of sex? What's the why? Because each of these guides kicks off with a dramatically different answer.
Okay, so the Islamic guide is built on this powerful principle of niyyah, which basically means intention. This quote, a saying from the Prophet Muhammad, is absolutely central. It means that the reason you're doing something can literally transform the act itself. So something as normal as sex can become a genuine act of worship if the intention behind it is pure. Now, what's so fascinating here is how they break down those intentions. It's not just about having kids. It's also about, protecting yourself from temptation, making sure you're fulfilling your spouse's rights, and yes, right there at the bottom, experiencing pleasure, but all within this lawful spiritual framework. Your intention is basically the key that unlocks the spiritual reward.
And then you flip over to She Comes First, and it's a completely different universe. The whole purpose is framed around the immediate human experience. The goal is mutual satisfaction, it's connection, it's intimacy. The authority here isn't some divine law, it's psychology and physiology. The why is the pleasure itself, because it's seen as this incredible bonding agent.
Okay, so you'd think these two guides would be on opposite planets for everything, right? But here's the thing. When it comes to getting ready for intimacy, they actually find some pretty surprising common ground. So the Islamic guide makes a huge deal about hygiene and looking good for your partner. And we're talking about both people here. This isn't just, practical advice. It's deeply rooted in religious tradition and history. This particular quote even suggests that neglecting your appearance can have really serious negative consequences for the relationship. And what's so wild is that She Comes First gets to the exact same place, but from a totally different angle. Here, cleanliness isn't a religious duty, it's a psychological tool. It suggests things like sharing a shower to help ease any anxiety and make both people more comfortable, more relaxed, and way more open to pleasure. And this right here is a subtle but really fascinating difference. The Islamic guide recommends using perfume, pointing out that it was a practice of the prophets. It's about adding a beautiful scent. The modern guide, though, encourages you to appreciate your partner's natural scent and taste as a key part of intimacy. So two very different paths to pleasing the senses. All right, now we get to the act itself. How is pleasure actually mapped out? What's the warm-up, and what's considered the main event? Honestly, the words they use tell you everything you need to know. So, the Islamic guide talks a lot about foreplay. It's described as something that's highly recommended, maybe even necessary before intercourse. And the crucial point is its function, to make sure the wife is fully aroused and can also achieve satisfaction. The guide is very clear that a husband shouldn't rush this part. But then, She Comes First comes in and just flips the script entirely. It introduces this new word, core play. And this isn't just a different term, it's a complete reordering of priorities. Things like oral sex and clitoral stimulation are moved from the warm-up category to become the central event, the most reliable path to female orgasm. Intercourse actually gets reframed as more play, something that might happen after the main event. And to back this idea up, the book hits you with this pretty compelling statistic. Get this. For women whose partner spent 21 minutes or more on foreplay, only 7.7% consistently failed to reach orgasm. And that number is used to argue that time and the right technique, specifically focused on the clitoris, are really the keys to mutual satisfaction. Every system has rules, right? Lines you just don't cross. But what actually defines those lines? Is it divine law or is it psychological harm? In the Islamic guide, the boundaries are crystal clear. They're absolute, and they're defined by religious law as haram, or forbidden. These rules are all about maintaining modesty, privacy, and what are considered natural gender roles. They're designed to protect the sacredness of the act and the people involved from sin.
Now, she comes first defines its boundaries completely differently. They aren't sins, they're psychological roadblocks. The things you shouldn't do are things like being impatient, creating performance anxiety, or having poor communication. So the big takeaway is that anything that creates pressure or an emotional disconnect is a taboo, because it totally undermines the main goal, which is mutual pleasure. So, we've journeyed through their philosophies, their prep work, and their prohibitions. Now, what does it all mean when you put it all side by side? Let's try to pull these two really distinct worldviews together. This table really just nails it, doesn't it? It pulls everything together so clearly. Look at the shift. The source of authority goes from divine law to modern sexology. The primary goal moves from worship all the way to mutual pleasure. The key concept transforms from a spiritual intention, niyyah, to a physical technique, core play. And the boundaries are defined not by religious rules, but by psychological barriers. So at the end of the day, what we have here are two vastly different maps for the exact same human territory. One is mapping a path to God through physical union. The other is mapping a path to orgasm through physiological understanding. So the question is, what does it tell us about our own universal search for connection that it can be charted in such profoundly different ways?